As I look back, I often think of things that we never forgot. The values that we fought to preserve, which were loosely called freedom. Those values were the lifeblood of our generation. Honor and pride in self, family, and country. The giving and acceptance of discipline in the moral standards of our times and our communities. Those were the values that we carried with us when we went to war. And this was what we fought for.
William Humphrey Tucker came into the world in Rosendale, Massachusetts on September 8, 1923. He was the middle child of 3 boys and 2 girls born into the family of William Tucker Sr., a printer by trade, and Marion Thomas Tucker, a homemaker. From his earliest days, Bill had a sense of duty to others. To help with family finances, each morning young Bill sold newspapers on trolley cars rumbling through Rosendale before setting off to school. He was a bright student who had an early interest in the military, participating in the Rosendale High School Cadets drill team as a second lieutenant. His exploits on the varsity football field earned Bill a scholarship to Central College in Danville, Kentucky, where his father was born. But when Pearl Harbor was attacked, he felt it was his duty to answer his country's call. He graduated from Rosendale High School, and on August 15, 1942, at the age of 18, Bill volunteered with the United States Army, requesting assignment to paratrooper training.
I felt strongly that I hadn't had the opportunities as a youngster that others had. And I wanted to do something special, something challenging. I had seen German and Russian paratroopers jumping on Paramount News, and I knew right away that I could jump too, and that most other people wouldn't.
Bill went through basic training at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and was then shipped off to Fort Benning, Georgia for paratrooper training. It was there that he made his first jump and received his paratrooper wings on Christmas Day, 1942. He was then assigned to I Company, 505th Parachute Infantry of the 82nd Airborne Division, as a rifleman. On Bill's first combat jump into Salerno, Italy in the fall of 1943, he narrowly escaped death when his chute got tangled. He was able to save himself with his reserve chute. While combat takes a terrible toll in injury and death, sickness is also a heavy burden for the combat soldier. Bill was no exception. While fighting in Italy, Bill lost over 50 pounds due to dysentery, jaundice, and malaria before recovering on a British hospital ship. Bill rejoined his battalion in England as it prepared for the greatest liberation expedition of all time, Operation Overlord, remembered forever as D-Day. The U.S. 82nd and 101st Airborne Division's orders were to destroy bridges over the Douve River, secure the Mer de Ray River by occupying both sides, and capture Eglise, a strategic crossroads, from the German garrison stationed there. At 2:30 a.m., June 6, 1944, hundreds of C-47 aircraft lifted from the runways in Cottesmore, England, carrying thousands of parachute soldiers, and headed across the English Channel. As they approached the coast of France, Bill's plane began to shake violently.
I could see tracers in the air. I think the plane was hit once or twice by ack-ack fire or machine gun bullets. Just before we got the word to go, Larry Leonard turned and yelled into my ear, "Jesus Christ, Tucker, we don't get paid enough for this job."
Bill parachuted into a field just outside of Saint-Mère-Église. and made his way around the back of the town church to the town square, where he and Larry Leonard set up their machine gun behind a tree. By dawn, Sainte-Mère-Eglise was secured, and Private Tucker was on hand as Lieutenant Colonel Edward Krauss walked to the town hall of Sainte-Mère-Eglise and raised the Stars and Stripes over the first town to be liberated in France. 2 miles away, thousands of Allied troops took heavy casualties as they fought their way off the beaches of Normandy and towards the paratroopers. Still behind enemy lines, Bill's patrol was ambushed by a German machine gun crew hidden behind ancient hedgerows. Men fell all around him. A combat engineer on his left was gunned down with a bullet in his head. Another bullet sliced across Bill's chest, miraculously missing him, but blowing apart the small Bible that his grandmother had given him. Bill was unscathed and always believed that the Bible saved his life. The liberation of northern France took a monumental human toll. The Allied forces suffered nearly 10,000 casualties, with more than 4,000 killed in battle. I Company of the 505th Regiment, 82nd Airborne, was no exception.
It lost 2/3 of its men killed or wounded. I Company had left its camp in England with 140 men and 8 officers, and returned to its camp with 44 men and 2 of its original officers.
D-Day was not the last in a long series of battles for Bill and the 82nd Airborne. As the lead force of Operation Market Garden, the 82nd jumped into Holland and ferociously fought Germany's SS Panzer divisions for 2 months along the German border. On December 16, 1944, after 3 weeks in Reims, France for R&R, the 82nd was again pressed into battle. Instead of jumping from C-47s, the 82nd rode into Belgium in Diamond T trucks. Their mission? Stop Hitler's forces as they made a final desperate push in the Ardennes region in Belgium and Luxembourg in what came to be known as the Battle of the Bulge. In the village of Foss, German resistance was fierce. More than 2/3 of I Company, including all of its officers, were killed or wounded. Bill suffered bullet wounds in his knee and arm, but again miraculously escaped death when a bullet went through the top of his helmet, but did him no harm. Germany's last-ditch attempt to split the Allies' lines failed, but with the tragic loss of thousands of troops.
As I staggered down the road, I happened to look back at the battlefield, and the sight will never leave me. The bodies of our comrades were strewn about where they had fallen and were partially covered with snow. I could see one man leaning against a fence post. He apparently was going to climb over it, but just didn't quite make it. One of our machine guns was still there in position, and the gunner and assistant gunner were lying behind their gun, but they would never fire it again. Just before I rounded a bend in the road, I looked back once more and bid the dead goodbye as the snow almost completely covered them. I guessed it would hide them from the war-torn world.
After a period of rehab in Liege, Belgium, Bill rejoined his company in February 1945 as the Battle of the Bulge continued to rage. Bill was overseas with the 82nd Airborne Division for 29 months. He was honorably discharged as a sergeant of the United States Army on September 27, 1945. Upon his return to the States, Bill attended Boston University through the GI Bill and stayed active with the 82nd Airborne Division Association. He met a young John F. Kennedy in 1946. Jack, who was running for a seat in the U.S. Congress, called Bill requesting to speak at an Airborne Veterans Dinner honoring the 82nd Airborne's Lieutenant General James M. Gavin that Bill was hosting. Bill welcomed Jack's request, and they ultimately became lifelong friends. In June of 1948, Bill married Caroline Aitken, also from Rosendale. They settled down to raise a family while Bill attended Boston University's law program. There, he served as an editor of the Boston University Law Review and graduated cum laude in 1949. By 1950, Bill had become a respected attorney and civic leader in the town of Athol. Meanwhile, JFK had greater ambitions than that of being a congressman. He again came to Bill requesting help with his upcoming quest for the Massachusetts Senate seat, then held by Henry Cabot Lodge, Jr. Bill responded by hosting JFK and Jackie Kennedy at campaign events in the Athol area over the next 2 years. Following his election to the Senate, Bill and now Senator Kennedy stayed close, with Bill continuing to host JFK's visits to Athol.
Dear Bill, I certainly enjoyed attending the annual reunion banquet of the Athol High School Alumni Association the other evening, and I want to thank you for the many courtesies shown me during my visit there. I also wish you would thank all the others who helped to make my evening in Athol so pleasant. Again, many thanks, and with every good wish, sincerely yours, Jack. John F. Kennedy. P.S. Right after the banquet, I talked with a man about the St. Lawrence Seaways. I was wondering if you would send me his name and address, as I would like to send him some material on it. Thanks. JFK.
By 1956, JFK was preparing for a presidential run. He again reached out to Bill to help him achieve a landslide win in the 1958 senatorial elections that he hoped would propel him to the White House. In November of 1960, JFK and Lyndon Johnson defeated Richard Nixon and Henry Cabot Lodge, Jr., and on January 20, 1961, a new generation of visionary leaders came to Washington. JFK, like every president, had many positions to fill within his administration. Jack didn't forget his friend and reached out to him, asking Bill to accept a presidential appointment to Commissioner of the Interstate Commerce Commission. Bill accepted the appointment, and he and his family relocated to Washington, D.C.
During the Kennedy years, the city of Washington had a powerful vibrancy. It was alive and pulsating. Those of us who were young, eager, and ambitious had a great time with a sense of camaraderie, faith in our leadership, and our hopes to achieve excellence. It was the best of times. It truly was Camelot.
At the time, groups of civil rights activists were participating in freedom rides, bus trips through the American South to protest segregated bus terminals. President Kennedy and his brother Attorney General Robert Kennedy agreed with their cause and sought to take executive action. But to desegregate interstate transit facilities across the nation, JFK and Bobby needed a unanimous commission vote in favor of the Attorney General's petition to the ICC that would mandate desegregation of all terminals serving interstate travelers.
My first commission adventure, and my proudest, had little to do with economic regulation. Nor is there any humor in telling about it. It was tough stuff. It was history in the making. In the first 2 years of the Kennedy administration, we were deeply involved in facing the continuing battle for civil rights.
With the ICC split between 6 Democrats and 5 Republicans, Bill went to work on undecided commissioners, including Ken Tuggle, an old Kentucky politician who was up for reappointment to the commission.
One day I called Tuggle and asked if he would have lunch at the White House with some friends of mine so they could get to know him in light of his pending appointment. One or two of JFK's staff dropped by, including Ken O'Donnell, who shook hands with Tuggle and wished him well in the future. That was like talking to the mountain at that time. Without making any deal or even mentioning the Freedom Riders case, he knew that he would be reappointed without question if we had his support. This locked things up. The commission issued an historic decision unanimously ordering all of these facilities be desegregated immediately.
Although the blow of losing Kennedy was deep and lasting, Bill completed his term as chairman under President Johnson, who asked him to stay on in 1967. Bill, however, chose to leave government service but stay in Washington, where he practiced law as a partner in the firm Saxon, McGuire, and Tucker. In June of 1968, Bill accepted a position as vice president of the Penn Central Railroad and relocated his family to a suburb of Philadelphia. In 1977, President Jimmy Carter appointed Bill to head the National Transportation Policy Commission. This was followed by service as a U.S. trustee for the Department of Justice for New England. As he grew older, Bill continued to pursue his passion for parachuting, participating in numerous jumps as sports parachuting in the U.S. became popular. Throughout his post-war years, Bill's fallen brothers-in-arms were never far from his heart. He returned each year to former battlegrounds in Belgium and Normandy. In Belgium, he participated in the Ardennes March in the footsteps of the 82nd Airborne. Fellow veterans, local residents, and Bill laid wreaths in memory of those who had fallen in battle to liberate the villages of Foss and Rochillenval. In 1959, Bill became the founding president of the International C-47 Club, named in honor of the aircraft that flew so many of the 82nd Airborne soldiers into battle. In Saint-Eglise, Bill worked with André Renault and his wife, Madame Simone Renault, in planning and construction of the Airborne Museum, memorializing and celebrating the bravery of the American soldiers. It contains thousands of items from airborne history, including an actual C-47 aircraft, a diorama of General Eisenhower meeting with the paratroopers as they prepared for the D-Day jump, and even one of Bill's uniforms. Bill continued to serve in the U.S. Army Reserves until his retirement with the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in 1966. In Normandy, Bill and the C-47 Club worked with Madame Simone Renault and her committee of Friends of the American Veterans to design and dedicate the stained glass window in the Church of Saint-Eglise. The window celebrates the airborne return of the Allies and the emancipation of Europe from Nazi domination. Bill was also a founding member of the Liberation Museum in Zeeland, Holland. It stands today as a memorial to the bravery of the soldiers who fought and died to rid the Netherlands of Nazi oppression. With the support of the French government, Bill commissioned a memorial to his 7 fallen airborne brothers, killed in Normandy several days after D-Day. He unveiled the plaque during a special ceremony in Freyville in June 2004. Bill's daughters recalled their father's many war stories, each starring a comrade of years past.
You know, my dad held in his heart a memory of each and every person that he served with. He always made himself a minor character as he recounted his many stories, and it was clear that he was uncomfortable with being called a hero. For Dad, he was just one of many fellow soldiers fighting for freedom.
Bill is a recipient of the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star, but one of Bill's proudest moments came on Bastille Day, July 14, 2008, when Francois Gautier, France's consul general to Boston, presented Bill with the French Legion of Honor, France's highest military decoration, in a ceremony that was attended by Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick.
When I think of my father, I think of his legacy. He told me his life was dedicated to the memory of his brothers in arms who had been struck down in the cause of freedom. That he lived his life in the best way he knew how to honor those young men who never had the chance to live out their lives and raise a family in the country they fought and died for.
William H. Tucker passed away at the age of 85 on November 21st, 2008. His final wishes were that a portion of his ashes be interred in Freyville, Normandy, where his comrades fell in battle on June 8, 1944. On June 6, 2009, he joined their honored ranks.
Ready, aim, fire. Ready, aim, fire. Ready, aim, fire. Raise it.